Hello YouTubers! Welcome to Big Buddha is Watching. I'm Big Buddha, and today it's the first of my requests from new subscribers. I've said it before and I'll reiterate. If you want a free review, subscribe to the channel, get in contact, I'll do you a free review. This is the first one I've done for a subscriber, and it's of the 1964 British comedy The Bargee. Written by Ray Galton and Alan Simpson of Hancock's Half Hour and Steptoe and Son fame. This will date the video in a few weeks because Love Film are shutting down now. Amazon are shutting Love Film down, and I may give a lament to that fact because I think that's a big error on their part. Love Film is such a brilliant service, but I'll get into that in a special video, I'm sure. But yes, The Bargee, which I watched last night on request. As I said, Galton and Simpson, famous for writing Steptoe and Son and Hancock's Half Hour. The couple who requested that I watch this did actually own the DVD, but they had misplaced it, so they were unable to lend it me, which is why I had to rent it. But I do remember reading the back of the box, in which it said Harry H. Corbett stars in Galton and Simpson's classic British comedy in which he plays the Casanova of the waterways. And as soon as I read that, I thought, this sounds amazing. I have to watch this. I wasn't let down. The picture you get from that description pretty much paints the type of film this is. It's 1964, so tonally, if I was going to equate it to anything, it would be in the vein of the Carry On movies. Not the later, smuttier ones, but the earlier, more whimsical ones. Carry On Waterways. Galton and Simpson, they wrote this, I guess it was after series 3 of Steptoe and Son, 64, and they were looking for a vehicle for their stars. They saw Harry H. Corbett. They'd already done The Rebel with Hancock, their first sitcom, so it seemed the logical step to do a film with their other breakout star, Harry H. Corbett, who is primarily known for playing Harold Steptoe in the 60s and 70s on the BBC. Before he got the role in Steptoe and Son, which he saw as just another job, he was a respected theatre actor. He got typecast after Steptoe as playing working class buffoons, but in actual fact he was a very well spoken actor, and he was very forceful and powerful in drama. I think you can see it comes through in his screen persona.
No, I think what you would say is the outside world has changed. The permissive age has gone further along the line, and we've just adapted with it. That's about all you can say. But our relationship still stays the same.
And he was labelled at one point as the British Marlon Brando. So I think the perception of Harry H. Corbett was that he fell short in his short lifetime because he died quite young and never quite realised his potential. I think the perception was that he would go on to be a big name dramatic actor and star in films, but this is really as close to film stardom as he got, making these little silly comedies in the 60s, and then he worked with Terry Gilliam on Jabberwocky later on, but by then he'd sort of lapsed into almost self-parody. It was almost an impression of himself that he was doing. It's a shame because I do like Harry H. Corbett's persona on screen, especially his comedic persona. He plays the working class intellectual, or at least someone who sees himself as maybe more intellectual than he is, very well. He has a great screen presence and a great charisma and great comedic timing. The way he just rolls his eyes at anybody who he sees as being intellectually beneath him, and the enunciation that he will put on sentences, and the fact that he couldn't quite pronounce his R's correctly.
He is a prince. Answer.
Yeah, I'll tell you a fortune for $50.
Well, that's very kind of you. Oh, what a shame he hasn't got his gold earrings on. He'll be king of the canal one day, you know. There's over 200 families on this bank owes him allegiance. Fourth in line he is.
This is a great thrill for me, meeting royalty, so to speak. Would you tell him I'm deeply honored?
Of course.
Thank you.
Not at all. Now, if you wouldn't mind moving your boat, we have got work to do.
For me, that always cuts to the funny bone. Harry H. Corbett is the reason I will watch repeats of Steptoe still, and will happily sit through a film like The Bargee. It's a very 60s plot in a way. It's kind of Alfie on the waterways. He's a bird puller. He has a bird in every port. He works the waterways. He has women all up and down between London and Birmingham. The first joke in this film is an unfortunate racist one about them getting back, and his sidekick in the film is played by Ronnie Barker, and he says he hasn't seen a white woman in weeks. It's like, ooh, okay. Yeah, this is from a different time. The basic plot is women in every port, but then one of these women, he gets pregnant and he has to choose whether to carry on his free and easy life on the waterways or to settle down and find love, and what the girl who he's got pregnant, her dad will make of it all. It's from a different time, 1964. It's really about the final days of the waterways transportation system in the UK, which even at the time, even in 64, was kind of only left open as a sort of token gesture. By this time, the waterways had been superseded by road transport, but they'd been dwindling for a century because in the mid-19th century, of course, you had the steam engine and the railways opening up, which could transport things a lot faster. The waterways and the canals in the UK are really a product of the Industrial Revolution. For a long time, they've been dwindling, so the 60s was very much the time that the transportation system on the canals was dying out and was being slowly replaced more as a leisurely pastime for sad old gits. But I think even as a leisure pastime, it was kind of in its infancy. So the film was made at a sort of crossroads. Not that this film really pertains to be any sort of social document about that. I mean, there's a fleeting reference towards the end from Barker.
Oh, look, I might as well tell you, Hemel. It's only going to be for another 18 months.
18 months?
Yeah, taking all the now boats off, Hamill.
What? Official?
Yeah.
Oh, that's it then, isn't it?
A more socially conscious filmmaker, say, like in the vein of Ken Loach or whoever, would have really made more of this, but this isn't that sort of film. It's an interesting snapshot at a period in British history, but it's not really about the contemporary times. It just wants to have a few laughs and tell a slight little story. I've spent quite a lot of time on the waterways of the UK on various narrowboats, and what's interesting about the look of this film when you see them going through the locks and on the barges is how little the waterways have changed in the last 50 years. At the time and still now, it's a real snapshot into the past. The locks look exactly the same now, the pubs look exactly the same, the lockkeepers' cottages look exactly the same, and so it has a whimsical, nostalgic feel to the film. Great cast. Getting back to the film now, this film does boast some of the finest names in British TV comedy of the 60s and 70s, as well as Harry H. Corbett and Ronnie Barker. So you got Corbett and Barker working together, but not that Corbett and Barker. You also have Eric Sykes playing a plummy amateur sailor.
No idea I was on a shipping lane. Are you all right? Yeah, we're all right.
Various familiar faces. Every now and again you'll see someone and go, oh look, it's Cleggy from Last of the Summer Wine. I think he was one of the officers in Porridge. You also have the noted Welsh character actor Hugh Griffith, who plays the father of the girl that Corbett gets pregnant. I think he was most notable for playing the Sheik in Ben-Hur, despite being a Welsh actor. He's one of those performers and performances where you watch, you go, wow, why have I never heard of this guy? Because he's a real sort of bull of a character, sort of in the Brian Blessed mould, but Welsh. He plays a hard-drinking lockkeeper. Quite a powerhouse performance. I guess you'd say he's of a theatre tradition that really no longer exists, where they're trained to perform to the rafters. Galton and Simpson, they were masters of the half-hour format. They knew how to tell a story in half an hour, a funny story, and pepper it with as many jokes throughout. And the jokes were always from the characters. Jokes were never crowbarred into Galton and Simpson's scripts. They were masters at creating relatable comic characters and the humour coming from them rather than having the characters just say their jokes. I believe I've only seen between this and The Rebel. I'm not sure, but they might have written more feature films. But on the evidence of those two films, I can see they floundered a little. They didn't really know what they were doing in the 90-minute format. I mean, John Cleese says that one of the hardest writing jobs you can do is write a 90-minute movie and have all the pieces work. It's far more complicated than simply stitching 3 episodes of a sitcom together and saying, look, that works. It's a different beast, a more complicated beast altogether. And this film, like The Rebel, it does have a disjointed quality to it. The middle section of the film where... What did you think of the Bargee? Where Corbett actually disappears from the story for a good 20-minute period. It suddenly stops being his film or his story and becomes the father's story for 20 minutes, and you get this little extended subplot, but all contained into one section rather than divided up neatly throughout the film, where the father is dealing with his daughter's pregnancy and wanting to find the culprit and going slightly mad and holding up the waterways and anyone passing through at gunpoint, and even resorting to using explosives at one point. It's a funny little subplot, and it's reminiscent of a kind of Hancock's half-hour plot. It's something that you could imagine Tony Hancock or Sid James doing, and it being a funny little diversion in one of those episodes for half an hour. But because it's plumped into the middle of this film and into somebody else's narrative, that's the point. It really throws the film off kilter for me and gives the film a disjointed quality. So not a wholly successful attempt from Galton and Simpson to transfer their talents from the small screen to the big screen. I mean, I have seen much worse examples of British sitcom writers trying to make this transition. If you've ever seen any of the On the Buses movies, they are much worse. This film does attempt to tell a coherent story, a coherent narrative with a beginning, middle and an end, whereas a film like On the Buses or Mutiny on the Buses, they are simply 3 episodes stitched together. No attempt to make an overall plot other than the lads go on a holiday and that's it. If you ever watch any of the On the Buses movies or just catch little bits, you can be forgiven if you just start watching one halfway through of not knowing where you are at any point in the film, because there's no sense of any sort of story there or any sort of character arc or character development or any sort of sense of where you should be in those films. This film does at least feel like a coherent story throughout with development. And I know this isn't strictly based on a sitcom, but it is from sitcom writers, and so there is a journey that the characters go on in this film that is coherent, but at the same time it is still disjointed. It does still feel like the product of writers who are used to working in the 30-minute format. Yeah, that's all I'm going to say. The Bargee, I like it. I enjoyed it. It's no classic by any stretch of the imagination, but it's gentle and slight, and I love Harry H. Corbett, and he always gets a giggle out of me. And if you put it on a lazy Sunday afternoon, it's absolutely perfect. That's all I'm going to say. That's my thoughts on the Bargee. Like I say, that was a request review. Anybody watching who wants me to review anything, by all means get in touch, but you do have to subscribe to the channel first. Anyway, until next time folks, this is me, Big Buddha, signing off, and I shall see you all out there in YouTube land.